This is the Power Break Podcast number 041, an interview with Charles DeMarco, President and CEO of New Life Solutions.
On intervention, we have 4 pregnancy centers, fully medical, a woman's place medical clinic. We have 2 in Tampa, up in North Tampa by USF, 1 in South Tampa, off Kennedy, and then 2 in the Pinellas County area, up by Tarpon Springs and Pinellas Park. And in our pregnancy centers, we encourage families and young women to choose life for their babies. Last year, we saw over 500 babies were saved last year. Inception to date, over 10,000 babies have been saved through New Life Solutions, inception to date.
Hi, I'm your host, Bob Brubaker, inviting you to stay tuned as we seek to give you a little power in this break to help you succeed in the race of life. The Power Break Podcast is a twice-weekly show that provides a discussion of biblical principles applied to daily life and an interview show featuring stories of perseverance to help you keep pressing on. I'm here with Charles DeMarco, who is the President and CEO of New Life Solutions. Charles, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Bob. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, let's just talk a little bit about New Life Solutions. I know this is a real passion of yours because you came in to take over for Saul Pitchin, and he's known as very passionate about it. So let's just talk about, first of all, what does it mean when you say New Life Solutions?
Yes, New Life Solutions is essentially the umbrella brand over a whole host of life-affirming family of ministries. And when I say that, what I mean is that we have ministries that focus on prevention through restoration and everything in between. So with New Life Solutions, you have a ministry, which is called More to Life, that goes into the schools, public schools, private schools, Christian schools, charter schools, and communicates a message of how healthy decisions impact your future. We talk to middle schoolers and high schoolers about how choices impact your future, how decisions can impact your future, what healthy marriage looks like, all the peer pressures that middle schoolers and high schoolers face, abstinence, sexual risk avoidance, social media, bullying, that there's healthy choices. So that is our prevention.
Okay.
On intervention, we have 4 pregnancy centers, fully medical, a woman's place medical clinic. We have 2 in Tampa, up in North Tampa by USF, 1 in South Tampa, off Kennedy, and then 2 in the Pinellas County area, up by Tarpon Springs and Pinellas Park. And in our pregnancy centers, we encourage families and young women to choose life for their babies. Last year, we saw over 500 babies were saved last year. Inception to date, over 10,000 babies have been saved through New Life Solutions, inception to date.
That is wonderful.
It really is a powerful ministry. And you know what's interesting, Bob, is that 9 of 10 women that see their sonogram choose life for their baby. Mm-hmm. And so we were one of the first, in fact, the first, back in the day, to have a sonogram in our pregnancy center. This is exactly the reason why organizations like Planned Parenthood do not show the sonograms to the women they see, because they know they will choose life. And so it's exciting to see life decisions each and every day in all of our centers. And so that's our intervention. In these medical clinics, these services are offered at no cost to the clients. And we do pregnancy tests, STI, STD testing, sonograms, discipleship classes, life skills classes, all at no cost to our clients.
Wow. And
on the restoration side, you know, when you talk about the weight of abortion, and right now in the United States, since 1973, there have been over 62 million abortions that have taken place. That is on average right now. We're averaging in the United States alone about 1 million abortions a year. That is 1 every 30 seconds.
Wow.
If we spend 30 minutes together, Bob, on average in the United States, there will be 60 abortions. Those numbers also do not include what we refer to as chemical abortions. If you saw the movie Unplanned, this would be where you receive a pill at an abortion clinic and then you take one when you get home. And that starts to induce labor. It doesn't include those numbers, so they're actually a little bit higher. But you can't talk about the weight of abortion without talking about the restoration side. And that's where our Passages of Hope ministry comes into play, where healing, restoration, hope, and redemption is found through Christ, found through the healing. You know, I say there's a lot of people in our churches today on their way to heaven, but not enjoying the journey. And it's because they're saddled with the guilt and shame and grief. However, they know they're forgiven. They haven't forgiven themselves. However, what the enemy means for evil and wants to keep hidden, when brought to light and used as a testimony, it's so powerful. I think of the verse in Scripture that talks about how the God of all comfort will comfort us in our time of trouble, so we can then comfort others who are walking down that same path. And you know, that's exactly what we see. Those facilitators and small group leaders who have gone through this, they can reach those going through it like no one else can. Wow. And it's a powerful ministry.
And this is for men and women.
For men and women. We have classes, and they're a 9-week Bible study for women and for men. And here's what I like about Passages 2. The Passages of Hope ministry. It is empirical, quantifiable data that has been published in medical journals. And what I mean by that is this. Back when this content was being developed, and the team that our directors were working on their thesis, they took all of the testing that psychologists use to measure things like guilt, sadness, shame, and grief, and they created a baseline with their respondents. So they went through the 9-week Bible study, and at the end, all of the data for all of the respondents were higher in a positive way, favorable improvement in all those categories. So they repeated it over and over again, and every time it was consistent and repeatable. So much so, the professor said, this data needs to be published in a medical journal. And here's our team said, well, okay, we know some Christian organizations and publish in their journal. And the instructor said, no, this needs to be a nationally published data. And it was.
Wow.
And in fact, we're actually right now going through the research phase again, just to validate the findings, as you do with any good research. You do from time to time to revisit. And we're doing that right now. And so this really makes an impact. And then finally, we have 2 other ministries. One, Breath of Life, which is a fully functional birth center, all medical. We have certified nurse midwives and nurse practitioners on staff. We do prenatal care, postnatal care. Anyone can have their baby there. And then Shepherd's Village as well, which is another ministry under New Life Solutions where we provide residential housing for single moms to help really impact 2 generations at a time, the mom and their children.
Well, Charles, there's one thing about it. You can tell you're passionate about New Life Solutions. Where did that passion come from?
Well, I have to tell you, it's really interesting how the Lord has orchestrated this whole story. I've been aware of New Life Solutions for quite a long time, and I was actually introduced to the pro-life movement through my wife, Cindy. We met in 1996, married in 97. We've been married 22 years now. But her and her parents were very involved with an organization called the Pregnancy Center of Pinellas County. And, in fact, my father-in-law served on the board of this group called the Pregnancy Center of Pinellas County in those late 80s into the early 90s. And the Pregnancy Center of Pinellas County is now known as New Life Solutions, which is an amazing thread to see 30-plus years later, their son-in-law, me, serving in this capacity here in something that they helped in a very grassroots way start up. My background for the previous 20 years was all in the corporate world. But we supported New Life Solutions. We did the Walk for Life each year, which is our annual Walk for Life fundraiser, the largest of its kind in the United States. We supported by going to the benefit dinner. And when I look at the vision of New Life Solutions, and I see to really impact our communities in a way that they are abortion-free, salvation-full, discipled and healed, I just wanted to be a part of a ministry that serves the kingdom in such a tangible way, where not just a good social service, but one that uses meeting physical needs, almost just like Christ modeled, to reach the higher spiritual needs. And we share the gospel with everyone we come in contact with. We live those principles out, create those relationships. We really attempt to plug people into churches and get them connected and show and demonstrate Christ's love by meeting all their physical needs. I reflect on the scriptures, and we see it in Proverbs, we see it in Psalms, that we must be a voice for the voiceless, a defender of the defenseless. Even in Proverbs 31, which most of it is the virtuous woman, but the first 8 verses is a beautiful picture of a mother talking to her son, the king, and she's trying to impart wisdom, character qualities, and what she says is, defend those that cannot defend themselves. Speak up for those that cannot speak up for themselves. and bring justice for those that can't do it on their own. And that's
that's the driving force behind you and your passion.
Yes, yes. I've been very active in my church for the last 25 years, serving in a whole host of capacities. And my wife and I would always talk, it'd be wonderful to serve in a ministry that is really making a difference for the kingdom. For years we've been saying that.
Really?
And then the Lord, the timing, He just authored this story so well. I got to know Saul and our board of directors and our team very well in 2015. And then in early 2018, they reached back out as Saul was beginning his succession planning, and we started that process.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
What did you do before?
Yeah, I spent 20-plus years in the corporate world with a couple organizations doing mergers and acquisitions, their marketing, operations. One was an optical organization, Transitions Optical, the lenses that get dark outside, lighten up inside. I did a lot of their global operations and marketing. Then went to a health club chain called Lifestyle Family Fitness. It was very popular here in the Florida area. And then between 2004 and 2012, we grew from 14 locations to 55 locations in 3 other states. So participating and working with the mergers and acquisitions, the marketing and branding communications, the KPIs or the key performance indicators to measure the success of each individual location. And did a similar thing for another chain with those former founders as they moved on as well. But then the Lord brought me here to New Life Solutions to serve in this capacity. And working with Saul has been amazing. He is a wonderful mentor, learned and continuing to learn much from him. And so I'm really blessed that to have that opportunity to serve with him in this process.
So how do you take what you were doing in the corporate world and apply it to New Life Solutions? I mean, this is a nonprofit organization. Okay, you're not moving toward mergers and acquisitions here, but rather you're driven by your passion to help speak up for the defenseless, etc. So how do those connect, or how do you bring that in, or what do you bring in from the corporate world?
Yeah, that's a great question because. Here's what I always like to say, and I've mentioned to our teams here. Being a not-for-profit organization, doesn't mean we are for loss. Meaning, what we want to do is to be able to be healthy enough to serve our communities, to serve our clients, where we are making a difference in terms of how we operate. We need to be sustainable year to year. So what that looks like is, how can we best, and again, how can we best communicate to our churches, our donors, those that support us, so we can be as effective as possible? We have these 2 events each year. The Walk for Life in May, it's a Saturday before Mother's Day, and in November, usually the first Thursday and Saturday, we have our benefit dinner. Now, both of those are fundraisers. Between the 2 of them, they generate much of our operating expenses for the year. So the business experiences in the past in terms of operational efficiencies, business process excellence, setting goals, setting a dashboard of those key performance indicators to know if we're making progress, those types of analytics that I'm very familiar with from a corporate, introducing them in a nonprofit sector works, meaning business principles apply very well in a not-for-profit environment. And there's a lot of efficiencies that can be used to help us be as efficient as possible, to be as good stewards as possible, but at the same time reach more. Because our communities so desperately need to hear, A, the Word of God, but B, to know that there are healthy choices out there regarding if they find themselves in an unplanned pregnancy. We can help.
Well, that speaks volumes, because you are bringing something unique to New Life Solutions. And one of the things that I can see is that you personally enjoy what you're doing. Would you say that?
Oh, yes. I absolutely. In fact, Saul just, recently asked me. He said, so, okay, it's a year now into this. How are you liking what you're doing? And my response to him, as it's been for others who have asked me the same thing out in the community, I feel like I am doing exactly what God has designed me to do. I am very thankful, very humbled that I even have an opportunity to serve in any way here and to serve our teams and our clients. But I thoroughly enjoy what I'm doing. I'm thankful for the teams that are so passionately called. They love the Lord. And to see the impact in this comprehensive approach in all of our ministries of how we're making an impact, again, not just physically, and you see that in the most immediate fashion, but then also the spiritual side as well, the more eternal focus.
Now, you're a man who has persevered through many things in life, and you persevered in your walk with the Lord, and now you're persevering in this ministry. How do you promote the persevering, I guess, keeping the vision in front of the staff and all the people who are connected with clients? How do you do that?
That is a great question because of exactly what we're living in right now. Here's what I think about. I really do reflect in Scripture on how, in Genesis 50:20, and we've all probably said this verse or I have reflected and prayed about this, how what the enemy meant for evil, God means for good. And here's what I mean by that. In 2019, we started the year this way. We see laws in New York being passed that essentially allow an abortion up to term. Other states quickly followed to support. In fact, this was applauded when you watch the clips. Quickly thereafter, we essentially embraced laws in the Northeast that embrace infanticide. So if a child survives an abortion, the mother and the doctor can decide what to do. We see laws not being passed, even right here in our very own state of Florida, where just a month ago, 6 weeks ago, a bill that was being surfaced in Tallahassee, that I went up to Tallahassee a couple months ago to talk about with our lawmakers, both pro-choice and pro-life, did not pass. And here was the bill that was being surfaced, right here in Florida. It had to do with consent of parents before their minor child had an abortion. In context, if your minor child right now wanted to have an aspirin at school, you need parental consent. If your minor child wanted her ears pierced, you would need written parental consent. If your minor child wanted to go on a field trip anywhere, you need written parental consent. So this bill was to require parental consent before a minor child has something as serious as physically and emotionally as an abortion. And it did not pass. And so right here in our very own state, this is what we're dealing with. And so if you focus on the things that are not going well as how the media embraces this and pushes this to our community, we're surrounded by a culture of death everywhere you look. However, there are victories to celebrate and wins that are taking place, and God is moving. And here's what I mean by that. Conversely, other states passed laws that are very much life-affirming. You see our President and Vice President of the United States speak out very boldly on the sanctity of life. Probably more, at least from my experience, than any other administration that I can recall. You see a movie come out earlier this year, unplanned, that had some radical changes and impact in the communities, because what you had is you had those that considered themselves pro-life already and supported what the movie said. It gave them a call to action. It made them say, what more can I do? How can I get involved? And those that considered themselves pro-choice, it made them rethink their ideology a little bit. In fact, over 100 people who have previously worked at Planned Parenthood or other abortion clinics have left that industry since that movie came out.
Wow.
And so that all culminated with our Walk for Life this year in May, I think, which was a record-breaking year, the largest that we've ever had and the largest in the U.S. And I think of that verse again. What the enemy meant for evil, God can mean for good. And I love how that verse ends. Because in context, Joseph is talking to his brothers, and he goes on to say, so we can provide for you and your children. And the next verse, even in verse 21, talks about providing for the children. And I think how much more, when I apply it within the confines of our ministry, of how we started this year, and the Lord blessed, and we are saving babies each and every day because of that.
That'll keep you persevering for a long time.
That's right. That is right.
Charles, thanks so much for joining us on the program today.
Oh, it's been a real privilege, Bob. I appreciate it so much. Anytime.
This has been the Power Break Podcast with another story of perseverance to encourage you to keep pressing on in the race of life. Today's interview has been with Charles DeMarco, the President and CEO of New Life Solutions. If you would like information about New Life Solutions and how you can get involved as a donor, volunteer, or a client, just go to www.newlifesolutions.org. That's newlifesolutions.org. You can also find the link on today's show notes at bobbrubaker.com. Just click on the Power Break podcast and go to show number 041 for today's show notes. The Power Break podcast is a twice-weekly show that provides a discussion with JT and myself on biblical principles to help you succeed in the race of life, and an interview program with stories of perseverance. Please subscribe wherever you have downloaded the podcast, and please leave a rating and a review. Check out today's show notes, books, the Power Break blog, and more at my website, bobbrubaker.com, and listen next time for the Power Break podcast.